Hey guys, how you doing? Here I am, the mad professor reporting from Erbil in northern Iraq, area called Kurdistan region, and this is an autonomous region. It's part of Iraq. Um, People here get their passports from Iraq, but they have a lot of local autonomy, and of course, there's a lot of constant tit and tat between the government here in Erbil, the Kurdish government, and the Iraqi government in Baghdad. But that's not the topic for today. So today, I just maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I got to get out of here pretty quick. So just I wanted to give a kind of an update on what's going on. There was a bit of a lull in shooting over the Eid, which ended a few days ago. And last night, there were a couple renewed attacks. We have a U.S. military base, I should say, right at the airport. So that's a prime target for the Iranians. They've shot at that hundreds of times, and most of the missiles or drones have been shot down. A few have hit, spectacularly so. But, when they're shot down, the problem is sometimes they hit somewhere else. So last night, apparently, one of the high-rise complexes, I believe it was a place called Lebanese Village, very close to where I used to live in Atkins. I used to have a villa there a few years ago. And even until recently, I lived fairly close by, a couple kilometers away from that spot. But this is right on the pathway between, come on, baby, come on, baby, I've got to brush your teeth. And this is kind of the only chance I get to do it, baby. It's right on the pathway between Iran's missile or drone site launchers. And apparently, Trump was boasting about some kind of present the Iranians were giving him. Who knows what present it was, or whether he was. Some people think he's talking to the family of the old Shah of Iran. That comes up to him and says, we're the real government of Iran, and we want to get put back on the throne in Iran, something that will never happen. And some people think he's just in his own mind. There was reports that an oil tanker was let through, but who knows what that had to do with Trump. And then later, apparently last night, Iran let out a video where they said in the video, here's your President Donald Trump, or whatever they called him, and they showed a missile being launched towards Erbil. So that may have been the very same missile. I don't know. So maybe Trump's president ended up hurting a few people right here in Erbil. So this is what happens when you put a maniac, a narcissistic, paranoid narcissist in charge of the U.S. military. I mean, it's stupid, and we warned the American people. At least as an American citizen, I did my bit. But there's so many people in America who are, I don't know if they're stupid or they just whatever. That's a discussion for another day, because it just getting into the psychology of people who support Trump. Are they just authoritarians? Are they racists attracted by his dog whistles? Is it the evangelicals convinced that he's like going to bring the second coming, which at this rate he's trying to do? He seems to be doing. But Trump himself, he's not an evangelical. I don't even think he's a particularly any more racist than most standard Americans. Throughout his career, he's gotten along well with members of minorities, although, that could just be, public relations and things like that. But anyway, that's not my point today. So what's going on? So a couple of missiles have hit, at least one last night in there. Supposedly a few drones have dropped fairly close to where I live. Again, a lot of these are not the drones or missiles themselves. They're debris from the missiles the Americans sent or somebody else sends to knock them down. And of course, those can land anywhere. When you knock a drone or a missile off course, then it can land anywhere. And even if it doesn't have the same massive explosive effect, it can still damage things quite a bit. Now, on to this other issue, right? I mean, Trump has been going back and forth talking about, we're gonna have a ceasefire. Oh no, I'm gonna bomb. Oh no, I'm not gonna bomb. Oh no, we're having great discussions. I mean, all of these are happening again between him and some imaginary other person, because Iran is refusing to corroborate any of these things. And at this point, I think anybody who has a brain, I mean, again, I've never been a fan of the Islamic regime in Iran, not because they're Muslims, but because they took the embassy. I mean, I'm a boomer. I was in high school when they took the embassy, and then they conspired with Reagan to keep the hostages, to keep Carter looking bad. If they had liberated the hostages at any point, probably Carter would have won that election, but they didn't. They purposely held on to the hostages. 57, 58 members of the U.S. consulate held captive in Iran so that Reagan could get elected president. And so this was the first real manipulation, absolute manipulation of American politics by a foreign power. So no, I'm not going to ever forgive Iran for that. As far as I'm concerned, they could go to hell in a handbasket. On the other hand, from an international law perspective, they are 100% in the correct. The United States and Israel attacked them by, a surprise attack. I mean, without any warning, without a declaration of war. This is what we call a crime against humanity. It's a war crime, literally. Donald Trump was joking in front of the Japanese prime minister about, oh, you guys never told us when you were going to attack Pearl Harbor. Why didn't you tell us? Well, yeah. And you know what? A bunch of Japanese officials were hung at the end of World War II, and that was one of their war crimes, was attacking Pearl Harbor. It was officially a war crime because why? They attacked Pearl Harbor without a declaration of war. That's the key. And in the middle of negotiations, right? And so what happens? We're holding negotiations with Iran, and boom, we attack them right in the middle of it for no reason. Really, I mean, at least Japan, you could understand, okay, they wanted to wipe out the U.S. We had no reason at that point. No, I'm not justifying the Japanese. They didn't have a legitimate reason at all, right? So we were in the same boat as Japan. I mean, so think about that, right? And Donald Trump not only knows it, he's boasting about it, right? Oh, yeah, you didn't tell us about your surprise, so why should we have told you about our surprise attack? Right? Okay, so you hung them for a war crime. So what do you think your penalty is going to be, I'm not going to call him the P word, Trump? And what's going to be your penalty, Higgs, whatever your name is, Higgsbreath or Kegsbreath or Higgsburg or whatever his name is? They're going to be right up there they should get ready for hanging. No, Shaggy doesn't think so because Shaggy's a nice dog. He doesn't want to see anybody hung. But I call him a liberal. That's why he's a liberal. I'm not a liberal anymore. I'm a conservative. I believe in good old-fashioned American values, and justice is one of them. Right? When you have a war criminal, you got to do something about them because otherwise, you know what? They're going to come back and do it again. So anyway, so they're talking about all these different options. Now they're talking about a 30-day ceasefire. I have no idea who's picking these numbers out of a hat, if there's any reality behind this. I personally am waiting for the Iranians to confirm that there's even a discussion about a ceasefire. So far, they haven't confirmed. And like I said, between Iran, who I got onto this whole thing because I was trying to show I'm not any fan of Iran by any means, but between Iran and Trump, right? Iran may lie half the time. Trump lies all the time, right? Maybe 1% of the time he tells the truth, but the guy can't tell the truth when he's playing golf. He can't tell the truth at any time within, as far as anybody knows. He's never told the truth about anything, right? So between Iran and Trump, I'm more likely to believe Iran. So what should they do? I mean, I don't think the Iranians are going to accept a ceasefire. Obviously, I may be wrong, but it doesn't seem to make sense. What is a ceasefire going to do for Iran? Obviously, they don't get bombed and they can reposition troops and whatever. Obviously, ceasefires are times where you're allowed to reposition stuff, build more weapons, bring more weapons in to a war zone. That's basically what a ceasefire is for, right? Prepare essential. I mean, if you have a 30-day ceasefire, you're not thinking about the future of the country. You're thinking we're going to start war again in 30 days. So you're getting ready for that, right? So what can they do? They can build more drones in the meantime. They can obviously bring in imported material from Russia, from China. They don't need to do that by sea. They can do that over land very, very easily. So, okay, that's very nice for them. What about for the U.S., on the other hand? U.S., the biggest problem of the U.S. is logistics. The U.S. is 6,000 miles, 8,000 miles away from home. They've run out almost entirely of defensive missiles. They've probably run out of offensive missiles. Their machinery is breaking down. You've got the aircraft carrier, the Ford, Gerald R. Ford is out of service because it's been on active duty for the last 10 months or a year. So, they need to repair that, bring in more aircraft carriers, bring in minesweepers from Japan. The U.S. can really benefit from a month, right? They can bring in masses of new armaments, bring in masses of new interceptors, or at least some new interceptors for their allies in the Gulf, for Israel. This is the thing. A ceasefire to some extent benefits everybody because it gives them a breathing space. But if you're looking at rebuilding, it's the U.S. that would really benefit from a 30-day ceasefire. And 30 days is a very suspicious period of time. And again, remember, there's no guarantee at all that Trump will respect the ceasefire, right? We've seen every single time when he has attacked somebody, what has he done? He's constantly said, we're going to attack. We're not going to attack. We'll attack next week. We'll attack in 2 weeks. And then, of course, he attacks when it's convenient to him. It has nothing to do with whatever he said. And, yeah, you could say that's, appropriate strategy. You don't want to let your enemies know what you're going to do. But, if you want somebody else to agree to something that you need to be a reliable person. You need to have somebody believe a word you say. And at this point, nobody's going to believe a word Trump says. I'm an American. I never had the dishonor of voting for Trump because I'm not that stupid. I gotta just tell you. So apologies to any of you out there who may have voted for Trump 1, 2, 3 times and may be regretting it. But you know what? At any moment, there is no excuse for ever voting for Trump. At every moment of any campaign, any speech he's ever given, he's always demonstrated who he is, right? And the story he gives on the campaign trail in the last campaign, the most appropriate one, the snake, because that's what he is. And he was telling you to your face, right? The story of the snake, right? Imagine the chutzpah of the guy to tell you to your face the story of the snake, that you're going to let him in your house, and then he's, because of your poor snake, and then it's going to bite you. Well, that's what he did, right? So when the viper bit you, right, you shouldn't have been surprised at all, right? Shaggy was bit by a dune bug yesterday. Poor Shaggy was bit by a dune bug. It's because he sticks his nose in everything, but I guess that's what dogs do. Anyway, so what are we going to say about this? Don't dig your clothes in, baby. So I don't see this 30-day ceasefire happening. I think the Iranian plan is to keep going until they get some kind of permanent settlement, or ceasefire only as an avenue to a settlement. And I'll talk more about what I think that settlement might do on another day. But I think Iran at least has to make a demand that the U.S. vacate its. They're going to make this demand. I don't know if it'll be successful. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. I mean, it would seem to me that at minimum they would demand the right to charge ships going through the Strait of Hormuz as a way of collecting reparations. Right, they're going to have about $10-20 trillion worth of damage from this war. I mean, they lost their fleet, they lost their air force, untold amount of civilian damages, lives lost. Right, and when you're an aggressor nation and you have no legal right under international law, and you basically lose that war, because obviously that's the realist part. Right? Doesn't matter what international law says; it says what it is. Right? You don't get the right to claim reparations, but the guy who was attacked does. Now, everybody knows that even if the World Court ordered the U.S. under Trump or any other president to pay reparations, they're not going to do it. Right? So what Iran is going to do is they're just going to claim the right to collect a fee, dare I say, tariff on oil going in and out of the Gulf until they get whatever reparations amount they feel compelled to. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a hard ask. They're not going to bend on that one because they can reinforce it militarily. By shooting at ships that don't obey. And everybody knows that they have a moral right to it. The Gulf states, well, they just lost, right? They weren't directly involved, but they were indirectly involved, particularly the Emirates, Bahrain, well, maybe not Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, certainly. These countries have been egging on the U.S. to take sides and to take a more active stance against Iran. Saudi Arabia has made it its main mission to wipe out the Iranian allies in Yemen. And really, I have no dog in that fight. I don't care who wins. But it's a paradox because you have Israel on the one hand fighting the Hezbollah, which is an Iranian ally or whatever you want to call them. And then you have Saudi Arabia attacking the Houthis in Yemen, which is another Iranian ally or whatever you want to call them. So Saudi Arabia and Israel have kind of gotten closer and closer together over the years. And this is something where, this is where Jared Kushner, the Trump's son-in-law, has been vital because he's been bringing these sides together, collecting, of course, billions of dollars along the way in, I don't know what you want to call it, blood money, drug money, whatever, feel-good money. And of course, Iran is an enemy to both, right? The Sunni, Saudi Arabia is kind of like this capital of the Sunni Muslim society. Tehran or Iran is the capital or the center of the Muslim Shia community, and they have hated each other for 1,400 years, endless wars. So, as they say, politics make strange bedfellows, but this is a truly unholy triumvirate between Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States. So it's possible Saudi Arabia has no base to claim reparations for damages done to their facilities. Neither does the Emirates, neither does Bahrain, neither does, I don't know about Kuwait. I feel Iraq is kind of the one place that has been badly hurt in this process. But still, they do have U.S. bases here, and those are legitimate targets. If you're waging war against another country, you can't say, oh, you can't attack my base that's in a neutral country. right? And I feel that overall, well, I wouldn't say entirely. Iran has attacked a number of Kurdish areas outside U.S. bases, but usually those have been Iranian expat Kurdish societies. So anyway, no comment on that. Anyway, the point is, Iran does have a legitimate basis for reparations under international law, I believe, and so that's going to be the baseline, is that they get collect dues. How that gets arranged, obviously it's going to mean the Hormuz Strait is not going to be as open. Vessels are going to have to go through kind of like a narrow chokehold that Iran controls on the eastern side of the strait. But it seems like I got to go really soon, so I'm going to cut this short. But another big demand they can make is the removal of all U.S. troops and bases in the region. And I kind of suspect that Iraq has been trying to push U.S. troops out for ages. Iraq might go along with it. Kurdistan, even though it's a part of Iraq, you kind of have to consider them a little bit differently. Certainly, you need to get the bases out of these densely populated areas, right? You need to get the U.S. base out of Erbil airport, right? Because this is absurd, right? To have a foreign military base right in the middle of your city, of a country more, I mean, since 20 years ago when they were keeping the peace here and funding other operations in Iraq. But now there's no reason for them there. They are clearly here simply as a provocation to Iran, right? And there's no reason for them to be there. Whether or not they let them have other bases up in the mountains or some area and say, look, you guys have at it, I don't know. Because, again, there's an international legal issue there, right? When you're deliberately allowing foreign forces to operate on your soil. So I'm not going to get into that. What other conditions could they be? I mean, to say that Iran should not develop defensive weapons, I don't know. I mean, you're not going to get that in a ceasefire. So they say they shouldn't develop nuclear weapons. Again, personally, I don't want to see nuclear proliferation in the world. But if there's a country that has demonstrated the right to defend itself because it's been attacked many, many times, it's probably Iran. And if we're not complaining about Israel having the nuclear bomb, maybe we shouldn't complain about Iran having the nuclear bomb. Israel has had the bomb for 30 years, and frankly, it's probably done a lot of good because it's meant that people stop attacking them, right? They're still attacking other people, so that's the downside, right? Could we live with that same situation in Iran? I don't know. As an American living in Iraq, as like I said, I'd prefer there be no nuclear weapons anywhere. I don't like the idea of the Ayatollah having a nuclear weapon, but we have to demonstrate absolute safety guarantees for them in order for that to happen, right? We can't be making agreements with them and then ripping them up every 5 minutes. So, and as I said, Trump has demonstrated that he's a completely feckless negotiator. He's useless at negotiations, by the way. I mean, his big thing is the art of the deal. This guy has never, ever, ever done a decent negotiation in his life. Even when he was in business, his technique was basically agree on a price, right? And then after the work was done, then he'd be like, oh, by the way, I'm not paying, or I'm only going to pay you whatever I feel like. That was it. That's not negotiation, right? That's fraud, right? Because once you agree on a price for a service, right, then you're in a legal area called contract. You have a contract with them, right? You can't just deny the contract, right? But that's his only negotiation, right? It's always backhand and whatever. So anyway, you have a good day. And look, if you want to support me at all, obviously you can like this, but what do you call it? Do that thing where you subscribe, because you get to a certain right now I'm aiming for 50 subscribers, because then you get to, I can like do live on the road, which you can't do unless you get 50 subscribers. So it's not a lot to ask. You can always click off later on. All right. In the meantime, have a glorious day. I have to go out, and it's raining, cats and dogs right now, but I got to pick somebody up, and I'm getting to the point where I might be late. So from Erbil, you guys have a great day, and hopefully no bomb falls on your head. Peace be upon you and all that good stuff. I'll do the cross as well. So, this is a totally non-religious, non-secular point of view. Bye.